welcome to Down to Earth. I'm Daphne Richards. Our question this week is about when and how much to water new plants. Well, until they are established, they do need quite a bit more water than once they're rooted in. So you do need to pay a lot of attention to the weather and perhaps the rainfall, which we may not be getting this time of year. High temperatures will cause the plant to need more water, and that's pretty obvious. But you also need to watch the intensity of the sun. As we get later into summer, the sun is brighter and more intense and will burn plants more easily. Small plants will dry up more quickly and be wilty before you know it. So you might go out there one day, it looks great, and the next day it just looks like it's almost dead. This watering will also depend on your soil type, so there are a lot of factors to consider. Can be kind of confusing, but once you get used to your soil, you'll be much better at this. Generally, you should probably water your plants every 2 to 3 days when they're new into the ground, especially if they were just planted recently and were already so warm. Be sure to mulch those new plants if you can, being careful that you don't have too much mulch near the stem. If you can, irrigate them in the morning and be very careful to only water the ground, not the leaves. If water is left on the leaves and the sun dries them out, it could be, if your water is too salty, that they will burn the leaves, those water droplets. After the first summer, the temperatures and the sun are not so intense on the plants into the fall. So you may be able to cut back to once a week once you get your plants through that first summer. You also need to know your plant type, obviously. Perennials, which are not woody, will wilt faster and need more water. Woody plants will not need as much because they can store more in their stems. Be sure to give your plants a thorough soaking onto the ground. Don't just sprinkle some water. Come back around the plant also, go around your whole garden perhaps, and then come back around and water again so that the first watering has time to soak into the soil. Our plant this week is Siberian iris, Iris siberica. There are a lot of great cultivars, but this particular one is ruffled velvet. You may have to mail order this plant. I have a spot in my garden that's perpetually wet, which this plant is great for, and it gets virtually no sun. Siberian irises are perfect for this kind of spot. And unlike most full shade plants, these plants have beautiful flowers too. I looked around locally, but the closest plants I could find were Russian irises, which require full sun, not great for my spot. Since these plants need to be wet all the time, they also make great choices for your boggy areas or shady ponds. You can get them in various shades, normally light to deep purples and blues. Ruffled velvet has a deep purple flower and makes a great addition to the foreground of my limestone brick here. They spread to about 1.5 feet and get about 2 feet tall, so they're daintier than traditional irises are. Mine died back to the ground in our extra cold winter this year, but it came roaring back in early April once our temperatures warmed up. To do in your garden this week, think about your container plants that are outdoors and consider mulching them. This is something that people maybe don't remember at this time of year, or the plant is in containers so they don't think to mulch it. This will actually insulate the soil. Your containers may need to be watered more than once a day when it gets really hot, but be sure that when you mulch in a container, maybe 1 inch to 2 inches deep, small aggregate mulch, and make sure that that mulch doesn't touch the stem of your plants if at all possible. That can cause your stems to stay too wet and perhaps to rot. We'd love to hear from you. Please visit klru.org/ctg to send us your question or a plant of the week from your garden.